This is the Context Atlas. Context to help you navigate our current reality. If you're old enough to read, there's a good chance that 50% of what you have learned or will learn is outdated in some way. Words, names, phrases, and their meanings are changing at the speed of thought, and what their definitions were 10 years ago might be very different today. Also, there are new terms and ideas that have popped up that changed the validity of other ideas, which is to say, life is confounding and ever mutating and complicated. We will try to run through them and clear the clutter and give you context for life. Bias projections. If you have a friend that told you that everyone that owned a red shirt was an alien, you would most likely put some distance between you and them for a while. If you had a family member that said that everyone that was a certain color was a criminal, again, you would put some distance between you and them. And in both cases, you should be questioning the information they share with you and others because they are a bias source, one that has a fundamentally skewed opinion that surely can be affecting their perceptions and therefore their conclusions. They would also be prone to looking for sources that confirm their bias, and they would be less interested in the sources of that source. Take vaccines. You can find hundreds of sites that say that they are safe and hundreds that say that they are poison. So how do you find the truth? Well, you can't, because of a term of the day, confirmation bias, meaning you selectively focus on information that supports your existing beliefs or assumptions while ignoring or downplaying contrary evidence. This is a powerful tool in manipulation and is used at an alarming rate. People that employ this often use selective attention to find that which confirms their ideas. They ignore disconfirming evidence, and this bias can lead to poor decisions because if you're not considering all relevant aspects of a problem, then you're not looking at the whole problem. Now, the obvious solution to this is to find a trusted source of information. But there's a problem with that too. And it's not because everyone is lying. It is because the people that want you to believe their half-truths, biased notions, and ideas that challenge long-known facts often use a great manipulative technique called projection. They tell you that all news is biased and fake to get you to trust them as a source. Yet they just told you that all news is fake, which is often missed, and that's due to our own selective attention. Another used by disinformation peddlers is to oversimplify a complicated issue, one that has multiple amounts of nuances, but it's much easier if they numb it down. Simplification, the idea that things are not complicated, is ridiculous, and we know that. We know that there are differences between most things, and that almost everything has levels of complications. However, they say this so that when someone tells you it's a complicated issue and tries to explain it, you think they're lying to you or trying to confuse you. If things were all so simple, there would not be levels of the crime of causing someone's death. Yet there are, and rightfully so. Yet the peddlers of biased information, they ask you to ignore this truth. And in this way, they are crafting your selective attentions, giving you reasons to ignore facts and explanations, training your mind to employ confirmation bias. And most importantly, installing this as a cornerstone of the skewed reasoning you will bring to all things going forward. Tragically, most of these fringe agendas that use these tools to confuse you are grown out of people's need to control others or things that are outside of their control. Is it possible that you believing that vaccines are really bad stops people from taking them? And let's say that happens. Then every time someone dies or gets sick from the thing that you stopped them from getting a vaccine for, they blame you. Only a person with skewed sense of importance would think that they know more than scientists or researchers or authorities on any subject. They tell you something totally untrue and unproven, and then tell you to question everything you already know, to take their idea and replace your knowledge based on a long history of education and real-world results. And that is another great way to find out if the source you are listening to is responsible or biased. These peddlers often use statements that cannot be validated or use examples that are not relevant. Take the vaccine issue again. There is a clear and undisputed record of vaccines being introduced and illnesses being reduced. And it is convenient and easy to say that everything would have been okay even if we did not use them at all, when there is no way to prove that statement. Or that other countries that do not have the diversity, population, or environment that America has did not use them and they were okay. Taking a country with the same population as one of 50 states and saying that is equal is an example of bias. And the lack of that proof or examples used that are not the least bit relevant to the situation should not be used to alter future changes in health policy. Real research should be used to alter changes in health policy. Now, for a test. Vaccines and autism. Over the last 25 years, there's been a rise in the cases of diagnosed autism, and this has been used to assert that contents in vaccines play a role in this rightfully called epidemic. However, over the past 25 years, the addition to the symptoms, signs, and levels of diagnosis of autism have dramatically increased to include previously unrelated symptoms. These symptoms include attention, retention, and mild communication issues. Some things that once might have been called shy or reclusive, or perhaps even introverted. To use a very old term, a wallflower, a person that did not choose to or could not interact in society like the rest of the crowd would. In these new and wider range symptoms, which I am not rejecting as symptoms of autism, there is a truth that seems easy enough to see. The correlation between high levels of diagnosis and vaccines could also be seen as a correlation between new discovered symptoms along with better diagnosis techniques equaling overall numbers we see today. A better way of saying that is that the more we look and the wider the range of symptoms, the more we will find, which is good and needed for proper care. And since these previously unrelated symptoms have been present in people going back as far as we have records, it would then follow that there would be more people over time that would have been considered to be on the spectrum, and therefore, the large numbers today cannot be factually linked to any use of drugs or vaccines or poor food or whatever. Because without being able to prove there were not millions of undiagnosed cases from before drugs were used at all, no one can say that the numbers today are related to life today. You cannot claim that there were less diagnosed cases before vaccines when you've added 30 new symptoms, increased attention to the disease, and educated doctors to look for these signs in a way that is unprecedented before the year 2000. Okay, now the real question is, what did you hear? Do you take that on face value? Do you think of it as a combination of bias-driven selective attention with some projection and the use of statements that cannot be confirmed? Am I using a lack of evidence as the proof of something? And lastly, can you ascertain from that what I believed before I wrote it? Did you feel mad or upset at the subject matter? Did it offend your beliefs? Did you start to take apart each point and mount an argument based on what you already thought? These are the emotional responses that the peddlers depend on. They want you to react that way because emotions block out reason, drown out logic, and stop you from retaining and evaluating new information without any bias. In any case, this is not about vaccines or autism. It's about critical thinking, learning to spot manipulation and bias. These things will give you the much-needed skills to navigate this brave, new, crazy world we live in. Until next time, this has been the Context Atlas. And remember the words of Albert Einstein, who said, "The difference between intelligence and stupidity is, intelligence has its limits."